watercourses, maintenance of retention ponds, pumps, all of which are poorly maintained. The Ministry of Local Government also has a role to play. Local government is the arm of government that is closest to the people, yet regional corporations are being systematically starved of funding. There is a continuous suppression of funding, and by that I mean, even though each regional corporation has an allocation approved in the budget, approved by Parliament, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Local Government has been refusing to release this money to the regional corporations to do the work that is necessary. We have at present in Penal-Debe Corporation, a corporation that has no funding to even buy fuel, to buy diesel for the vehicles to go out and do routine maintenance work within the region. A region that is hard hit and was tremendously affected during the last few days with flooding. Meanwhile though, in Port of Spain City Corporation, they are considering a $20 million project to put AstroTurf in a park in Port of Spain in spite of objections from residents. I call on the government to immediately make funding available to regional corporations. They are responsible for disaster management. They are responsible for the maintenance of watercourses. The Ministry of Agriculture also has a role to play in supporting our farmers, in providing drainage and irrigation system, in preventing predial larceny. There is no doubt that the heavy flooding we have experienced throughout the country will affect the price of produce. And what will be the effect on small businesses? What will be the effect on the food industry? What will be the effect on families being able to put food on the table? The fact is that the government's neglect when it comes to agriculture is going to affect food prices. There are still many people unemployed because of the COVID lockdown, as well as because of the incompetence of this PNM government when it comes to creating jobs. People who have small businesses who are recently now being allowed to sell takeaway food will face increased prices of produce and therefore may be forced to increase the price of the food they sell. With so many people unemployed, it means less people will have the power to buy, and these families who depend on the food business to bring income will be severely affected. The government has a responsibility to deal with flooding, to deal with every single region in this country where disaster management is concerned, where the maintenance of watercourses is concerned, and they have been totally disconnected from the reality on the ground. We in the United National Congress stand firm with our citizens. We stand firm and we continue to represent. I call on the Minister of Works to do his job and stop making empty promises. I call on the Minister of Local Government and the Minister of Finance to stop playing games, a back and forth game about who is responsible for financing, and release the funding approved in the budget for regional corporations. Our councillors are out there with no funding, unable to clear drains, unable to patch roads, unable to do the basic things that regional corporations are responsible for. I thank you this morning for your attention, and at this time I want to pass over to my colleague, Member of Parliament for Naparima, Mr. Rodney Charles.
Thank you, colleague. Thank you, colleague MP Khadija Amin. Yesterday's news conference showed clearly that it is yet to dawn on Dr. Rowley that his COVID policies have failed miserably. His policies of one, buffing citizens, blaming everyone, weakly political posturing while providing little or no useful information are not building the trust needed for success. For the record, let me state emphatically that the UNC supports the vaccination drive. And saying otherwise, as he implied yesterday, is dishonest and counterproductive. All our MPs, all councillors, supporters are doing their utmost to encourage citizens to vaccinate. We have raised important concerns ad nauseam in and out of Parliament, which Rowley's government adamantly refused to accept. He has said on diverse occasions that he will accept no advice from Rodney Charles, none whatsoever. The reality is he accepts advice from no one. We sought early in the day and on numerous occasions to raise the matter in Parliament, only to be obstructed by your MPs, Prime Minister. Dr. Bodo, for example, sought in vain to alert you on how we would treat with visitors arriving with mixed vaccines. Dr. Gopi Singh, given his vast medical knowledge and experience, has offered advice. Advice on outdoor commercial activities in sunlight with proper protocols in place was ridiculed, even yesterday. When we realized that you were slothful, Prime Minister, in accessing free vaccines from India, our political leader took it upon herself to write the Indian government. And that resulted in a belated gift of 400,000 COVID vaccines. Prime Minister, you are our first Bajan Prime Minister, and hopefully our last. Your tedious weekly news conferences are a colossal waste of state resources, viewers' time, and taxpayers' money. A simple news release telling us the number of deaths, those testing positive, those rehabilitated, and the vaccine rollout plan would suffice. By politicizing the briefings with attacks on all perceived enemies, the PM, Prime Minister, has turned the event from an educational enterprise to one more suited to a political platform. By co-opting career public servants, he has unwittingly blurred the lines between public service, which is professional and unbiased, versus raw politics, which is partisan, political, and self-serving. Public servants, especially permanent secretaries, I want to remind them, and chief technical officers must recognize that their jobs are protected by the various service commissions, constitutionally protected. This is to safeguard their independence and autonomy. Their advice to the political directorate must always be professional and dispassionate and rooted in the law and the national interest. I'll say no more on this. Dr. Rowley, by his many sins of omission and commission and his attitude to others, has lost the trust of the population. And this in large part explains the vaccine hesitancy of which he complained bitterly yesterday. Prime Minister, it is a matter of trust. How could the population trust Dr. Rowley when he and his team have steadfastly refused to tell us mortality rates in high dependency units and ICUs? Are our COVID ICUs morgues where you enter to die? Give us the facts. Dr. Rowley had an entire year to roll out a comprehensive vaccination plan, an entire year. We were told yesterday that only 194,710 citizens have received 2 doses. And there are currently 600,000 persons yet to receive COVID vaccines. 600,000. Imagine, only 14% of our total population fully vaccinated. For Bermuda, It is 64%. Barbados, 26%. St. Kitts and Nevis, 37%. Antigua and Bermuda, 31%. What is wrong with the governance in Trinidad and Tobago? What Dr. Rowley fails to tell us is that if everyone who is eligible turns up to be vaccinated, we will be in deep, deep trouble. The vaccines are simply not there due to a slothful and inadequate procurement process. Why not? Yesterday, the Prime Minister did not take the opportunity to enlighten us with a demographic and psychological profile of those refusing vaccinations. How many are refusing for religious reasons? What is the communication strategy to reach these persons? Laughing at pastors who do so does not cut it. We need to find out who are the critical pastors, imams, and pundits who must be influenced. Where is the plan? How many are refusing because of disinformation? Where are they getting the disinformation? And what are the counter communication strategies? What is the social media plan for promoting vaccinations? What percentage of those refusing to be vaccinated are doing so for non-legitimate medical reasons? What are the conditions, the arguments, and the medical personnel who need to be brought on board? The UNC today is calling for a database communication strategy that addresses all the elements of the communications process relating to vaccination hesitancy. The message, the medium, the communication channels, those receiving the information, and the feedback analyses. We ask, who are the critical persons or reference groups who can be asked to help change minds? This has not been done. Whooping it on the fly, as witnessed every Saturday, has not worked and will not work. Dr. Rowley does not rely on notes. Everything is in his head. Could it be that the anger shown on Dr. Rowley's face yesterday resulted from the fact that it is slowly dawning on him that he may have on his hands hundreds of thousands of soon-to-expire COVID drugs as a result of vaccine hesitancy? He will soon realize that his trademark bullying will not suffice, that buffing all and sundry and blaming the opposition will not cut it. On Saturdays, we witnessed those operating as if within a culture of impunity. We will provide charts even if no one is interested in them. We will provide data we alone deem important. And if you don't like it, we will set the tone for corporate bullying. So, instead of encouraging citizens to get vaccinated, the government resorts to corporate bullying. And I quote from yesterday, if the real sector becomes heavily vaccinated, they can be cautiously reopened in 2 weeks, end of quote. Thus said the Lord and Master, Dr. Keith Rowley. Coercion and bullying instead of consensus building and honest engagement. Let us reason together, says the scripture. Prime Minister Dr. Rowley issued a call to personal service workers like caretakers and gardeners to get vaccinated in the hope that they would return to work in 2 weeks. We are treated like children. What is the cost of the drugs he has purchased? We are told that we are too fast, and it is in a non-disclosure agreement. So I could find out the cost of Moderna and AstraZeneca and Pfizer's sold in Europe, but I cannot find out how many of my tax dollars are spent on COVID drugs. So we want to hear from the Prime Minister next Saturday, and I'm challenging the Prime Minister next Saturday. We want to hear some critical information. One, what became of the offer by the EU to donate surplus COVID drugs to countries such as ours? Two, why are we not as yet able to get any surplus drugs which the UK Foreign Secretary said days ago he would donate to developing countries, including those in CARICOM? My information is Jamaica is receiving. Three, we always seem to be last in line when it comes to donated COVID drugs. Is it that this government has a problem with gifts, preferring instead to spend scarce foreign exchange on COVID drugs? And if so, why? Four, this brings us to the question of our high-priced, underperforming US lobbyists. What quantifiable benefits has he brought to Trinidad and Tobago for over 50 million paid to his firm since 2015? Why has he not been able to source one COVID drug for us, assuming he had nothing to do with the 45 Pfizer gift? Here's the chronology of failure by our lobbyists. March the 4th, 2021, letter to President Biden by our Prime Minister. March 19, 15 days later, follow-up letter to President Biden. March 25th, 2021, virtual meeting with Congresswoman Maxine Walters. Discussions included access to COVID vaccines. April 21st, 1 month later, virtual meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Mr. Anthony Blinken on matters including COVID. May 27th, virtual meeting with House Majority Whip James E. Clyburn, which included discussions on COVID vaccines. What tangible results have we received from these meetings? Clearly, we are spinning top in mud on our U.S. lobbyists. How long will it continue? Last June, President Biden announced countries will receive 55 million doses of COVID vaccine as part of a wider 80 million pledge. Roughly 41 million doses will be shared with COVAX, which will allocate 14 million to countries in Latin America. This is NBC News, June 21st, 2021. Haiti got 500,000 doses of Moderna from the United States. To date, U.S. donations have been made to Brazil, Guatemala, Bolivia, Honduras, El Salvador, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Paraguay. How many did Trinidad and Tobago, arguably with a worse deaths per capita, how many did we receive? Just days ago, the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab announced that they will be delivering 9 million doses of coronavirus to, quote, the most vulnerable countries. According to the BBC News, July 29, 2021, Kenya, Jamaica, and Indonesia are among countries receiving vaccines. Kenya received 817,000 doses. Indonesia will get 600,000 doses, and 300,000 will be transported to Jamaica. Where is Trinidad and Tobago in all this? Nobody in the world cares about us. Those who we care about demand non-disclosure agreements on costs. Something is wrong. The COVID crisis has brought many things to the surface, like rising poverty in Trinidad, child abuse, domestic violence, and a failed education system that cannot account for 2,000 students that have dropped out of the system and an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 that have fallen irretrievably behind in their online studies. What it demonstrates most glaringly is that every which way you look at our handling of our COVID crisis, one sees evidence of total failure. In conclusion, Dr. Rowley must know it, and it is increasingly most manifest in his utterances and facial expressions at weekly COVID briefings that we have manifestly failed in this COVID exercise. Thank you.
Good morning, Austria. It's Pavel from the newspaper here. I just wanted to go back to the issue of the flooding that we would have seen. I think it was late on Friday and over the course of the weekend in different constituencies. Can you give me a figure of how many people or how many different communities would have been affected, and what has been the response from the opposition?
In the Trinidad and Tobago region, it seems to be the hardest hit region. The constituencies of Oropuch East, Oropuch West, Separia fall within that Trinidad and Tobago region, as well as the Separia region. In those communities, you have residents being affected tremendously, where water is in some places as high as waist height. There's a lot of livestock being affected there. So you have farmers who have cows and poultry and so on, and they have been severely affected. We also have a lot of agriculture in some of those areas. In my own constituency in St. Augustine, as well as in the areas surrounding the Caroni River and the Caroni River Basin, we have had some flooding as well. The St. Helena Chin Chin area has been severely affected. In St. Augustine South, we have also had some flooding, but thankfully it was not as bad there. Many of the areas that where we have agriculture also were former Caroni lands that are prone to flooding, but with proper management of the drainage and irrigation in those areas, we saw when the People's Partnership was in government that it is possible to minimize or totally eradicate flooding in many of those areas and allow the farmers to continue to be productive. The flooding will definitely impact on the prices in the wholesale and retail market for fresh local produce, and in a time when we are speaking about economic recovery, local economic development and support is very critical in ensuring families have income within Trinidad and Tobago.
Has there been any sort of response, I don't know if in terms of support or, any kind of assistance from the MPs and councillors in the area?
Our UNC councillors and our UNC MPs are on the field. In fact, some of them were out in dinghies over the course of the weekend, Thursday, Friday, and as well as yesterday, and they have been visiting. What we have been doing is taking information to provide to the various disaster management units of the regional corporations, who will in turn do their own assessments. The concern is where you have families that experience damage to their homes and there is an immediate need for repairs to those households, they have to wait quite a while. We saw recently, 1 week ago, in my own constituency in St. Augustine, for example, where several roofs of houses were damaged by high winds. Those people were only visited by the Self-Help Commission 2 weeks after the incident. So that is a bit of concern for us, because many of these families, they cannot live without a roof over their head. The slow response of the government is of concern to us, because it is important to restore people's lives soon after a disaster. The disaster units seem to be underfunded, but also what is missing is guidance, policy guidance. In the face of the COVID-19 and all the new protocols, the disaster management units will require policies to protect the staff as well as to protect citizens. And I don't think the government has really been forthcoming with guidelines and support and resources to the disaster management units to allow them to respond in the way that they should. Our UNC councillors remain committed, our MPs remain committed. We are on the field, boots on the ground, and we continue to reach out to those in need.
Just wanted to kind of segue a little bit from what was discussed this morning. I think it was late on Friday afternoon we got word that I think it was in the figure of over 300 workers of CAL were to be laid off, and I think an additional 99 over the next week or 2 weeks or so. I don't know if the opposition would have received any sort of response on this, but if you all haven't, is there anything you'd like to say on it?
The systematic firing of employees has been going on with this government because of their incompetence and because of poor management long before COVID. The firing of the workers of Caribbean Airline, UTT, Petrotrin, and several other state agencies is only part of the result of the PNM's incompetence. Using COVID-19 as an excuse is really failing now. Those people are joining thousands, hundreds of thousands of more people who are at this time jobless. The government has to present a plan to this nation as to how they are going to stimulate the economy, how they are going to create jobs, and what type of support can and will be provided to those who are losing their jobs because of COVID as well as because of the incompetence of the PNM.
On Friday afternoon, National Security Minister Gerald Hines would have hosted a media conference at Temple Court where he would have addressed a number of different matters, among which were the safety concerns of the Cali Bay fishermen.
Yeah.
He said over the past year, several programs and initiatives that have been put in place, including, I think it was a Coast Guard base in San Fernando, as well as training sessions from members of the police riverine unit and the Coast Guard themselves, to which he said, to his surprise, they didn't seem to express much of interest in it. And I know this is something that would have been spearheaded by MP Rati Ram.
Correct.
He's not here right now. Based on what he would have said during the press conference, are you pleased that this is enough what he has been doing? You think more could be done, or what's your thought?
I think the government has to come with a clear policy as to how our borders will be protected. Secondly, how our fishermen will be given support. It cannot be a situation where bandits attack fishermen and there is no mechanism in place by the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard to assist. It cannot be that 14 bodies could turn up on our shores and nobody knows. And the question we ask is, the minister must stop dealing with a plaster on a sword. The president of the Cali Bay Fishermen Association has indicated that it was the wrong time because they had to be searching for the bodies, which is the Coast Guard job. Both bodies were found by fishermen. And we asked what MP is doing. Donations were raised to provide fuel for the fishermen. They also said that when they called the number, it did not, there's no response. So the question is, it is time for the Trinidad and the Minister of National Security to set up targeted response times for a crisis at the sea. So that if a fisherman is in trouble and he calls a number, there will be a response within 15 or 20 minutes. That requires relocation of bases strategically throughout Trinidad and Tobago. As it stands now, for every fisherman I have spoken to, they are on their own when they go out to the sea. And it's a waste of time to call the authorities to provide assistance. So I think the fault is clearly with the ministry and its inability to provide infrastructure and mechanisms and systems and procedures to provide a 15-minute or 10-minute response time to individuals in crisis at the sea.
Outside of the issue, on the issue of vaccination now, I think it was over the past week, we would have seen, outside of the government's initiatives, several private sector companies, entities and businesses have also been doing their best to encourage their own staff to take the job, as it were. Some of them successfully, others had some hesitance, whether it's on the grounds of general health or religious reasons. Is there anything you'd like to say in response to that?
No, well, we commend the private sector for supporting the initiatives to get people vaccinated. What we would ask the private sector is do not fall for the strategy of coercion rather than consensus building. So that if they are going to force employees to take the vaccinations, we feel that is a last resort and not the best initiative. I think the time has come for the business sector to work with the trade union movement, to work with the churches, to work with the NGOs to come up with a collaborative consensus development process that will increase our vaccination rates. And we are hearing uncomfortable information that workers are being forced and penalized for not taking the vaccine. In fact, I saw a job advertised in Parliament yesterday, and the job insisted that persons who apply for the job must be vaccinated. Now, I think that is going too much on the side of coercion rather than on the side of persuasion.
Last week, I want to say Tuesday, but it was early last week, Maria Abood and Umar Abdullah would have made a walk from Mobile Junction to the Red House, where they sought to deliver letters to the Prime Minister, the opposition leader, and I think a few other MPs as well. And they were told to instead deliver these letters to the respective offices, which will be the office of the Prime Minister, office of the opposition leader. I don't know if either you or Ms. Salmon could confirm if the opposition leader would have received this letter.
I'm not aware at this moment, but I could check and let you know.
Yeah. All right. That's about it from me.
Do you have any questions from online? Okay. All right.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to our comments. We are, the United National Congress, stands supportive of any initiative, including vaccinations, that will assist the growth and development of our country. We plead with the government to be open-minded and to work towards consensus building rather than buffeting and shaming and embarrassing. So, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you on behalf of my colleague, MP Khadija Amin, and myself. We thank you for being an attentive audience. Thank you.